Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the African Messenger. This is your host, Mr. Gloria Gazal, welcoming you back again to this special edition. Today is really special and exciting because it's the first time in a long time that we've been able to kind of record again. So I'm pretty excited to be back online, to be back to be able to make some recording, reaction, and kind of you know how it goes. Just reacting to things and kind of like making points that are constructive to the community at large as well as society. And so to begin with, I would just want to give thanks to all the people who have made this really come true. One of the reasons why we went off not being able to produce videos was to the fact that we didn't have the right equipment at some point. You know, we had some equipment malfunction, we had to put it off, and I'm just so excited and happy that now we're able to come to you live in high definition, which is really exciting. I kind of like the picture, how it looks like. So that's really awesome. And so I'm just really excited and thankful to the people who contributed and the people who made this happen. If you want to contribute to the African Messenger, we encourage you to do so. Anything that you can contribute, monetary, anything that will continue to kind of like advance the many different projects that we have, please do so. Our PO box number is 30115. It's in Portland, Oregon. The zip code is 97294. Again, it's the African Messenger, PO Box 3115, Portland, Oregon. Zip code is 97294. So anything that you can contribute and kind of continue to help the work that we're doing is really great. So again, I give thanks to those people who contributed. Thank you so much for the equipment and some of the things that we had to do. We still have a lot of work to do, but at least we have somewhere to start again, that we'll continue to make an improvement, which is a good sign and a really exciting one. As I said, I just wanted to kind of like take a moment to briefly reflect about the events that have been taking place in the last few weeks, in, like, you know, especially in Central Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And as it kind of like within that region, really, it's kind of like a larger problem. What was kind of like really interesting is to see an article that I just read right now that was sent to me about people suddenly starting to blast Susan Rice, the current United States ambassador to the United Nations, as quote being able to oversee, pretty much, you know, being in charge at the time when a genocide was taking place. That's kind of like striking to me. It's like it's like an article that has a point, but actually misses the point. And to me, that again, it goes back to what I've been talking about all this time, the finger pointing part of what we kind of have come to see over and over again, that instead of taking responsibility, we always kind of like turn into, I guess, like, you know, engaging into finger pointing. You know, as my first point would be to say that Susan Rice is not an African. Susan Rice, I guess this is not the right way to put it. Susan Rice is a United States ambassador to the United Nations. Is not the African ambassador to the United Nations. She's not the Central African ambassador to the United Nations. She's the United States ambassador to the United States, and so her job is to advance the interest of the United States. And I you know, like, for anyone really thinking about blasting her off, how she's, you know, kind of like the genocide is happening and she's just not there. I don't buy that. Look, I understand there's frustration and people, you know, want to see the world do more and so on and so forth. But you kind of also have to understand that each individual country is really there for its own interests. And if you have brothers who are fighting against each other, it's hard to get into that. I'm just going to give you an example here because, I mean, my point is that Susan Rice is doing what Susan Rice was hired to do, which is to represent the United States to the United Nations, not to represent the interests of any other country. And so whatever things come up, she's going to be advocating for the interest of the United States, not any other country. And so, uh, instead of starting finger pointing at her and anybody else that really within that mentality of blaming, it'll be more productive to look inside and see what could individual countries be doing, especially their leadership. And that's really so striking and really nerving that a lot of people are dying because of like one or two people, like one or two individuals, one or two politicians. They get sent out these, they send out just a word and people start killing each other. It's like if you talk about mind control, I mean, there's no bigger weapon to control the mind than making sure people continue to be ignorant. And that's like, it's just such a sad thing. I mean, I see how like what is the hardest thing to understand about, like people understanding that, look, it's not always killing somebody, killing your brother, killing your sister is not always the answer. Yeah, actually, in fact, it's never the answer. There are many different ways to resolve conflict without having to take arms and so on and so forth. I mean, we've seen the examples all over the world for many years. Even now, today, we keep seeing it here. I see what happened with the Arab Spring. You look what happened in Egypt. You see what happened in Libya. See what happened in Morocco and so on and so forth. Yes, there were some people who died, but largely these were protests. People took to the street. They'd had enough of an individual, a dictator, someone, a politician playing them to get what they want, not what the people want. And so the point is, it's the people at the end of the day. People have to stop. The whole blaming game has got to end. People have to understand that there will never be peace as long as we are always looking for someone to blame for things that we could be doing ourselves. Am I saying that other countries, the West, Asia, China, whatever, they have nothing to do with what's happening? I don't think so, because most of the thing we're using, including the technology that I'm currently using as well, materials and all those things are coming from there. And so these companies are constantly going to be looking for cheaper things, cheaper resources to be able to make the things and to make profit. That's for sure. And so again, it goes back to what I was saying. If a conflict is what is needed for them to get those resources for cheaper, of course they're going to do that. I say it and I'm going to say it again. It is not in their interest not to have a conflict. It's in their best interest to make sure there's war. The people are killing each other so that whatever it is their interest they're looking at they will be getting what they want. Now, the responsibility is on brothers to understand that they are being played, to understand that someone is kind of playing you to get you to commit murders and to kill each other for them to advance their interests. And I don't know who that is. There's a whole lot of things. They're corporations, they're governments, and they're even leaders within those specific countries participating into this because they too are benefiting. And so this whole thing about blaming the West and blaming somebody else for the things that are happening is just beyond ridiculous. That is the most the most how can I phrase this? It's just so ignorant, like, to constantly be pointing fingers and saying, well, it's them, it's her, it's him. It should be more about what can we do, what should we do, because you could have even this is what's maddening. You have leaders of countries that are creating all this mess because they too are profiting from the war. And trust me, they are profiting from the war. The very leaders were supposedly elected by the people to lead the people. But they're also benefiting because their pockets are being filled. They're building houses. They're sending their kids out to kind of like get good education and so on and so forth. And so money is coming in. And as long as their families are in protection, they don't really care much. And so, but the sad part is now the people who call those whoever are in charge, quote unquote, leaders, believe everything that they are being told. Again, like I say, the greatest tool to manage the people, to control somebody's mind, is ignorance. If you can manage to keep people out of schools, you manage to keep people out of like thinking freely, to have the freedom to speak their mind and to exercise their thinking, that's the most dangerous thing. The biggest danger, the biggest threat to Africa, the biggest threat to Central Africa, the biggest threat to the people of Africa is not, it's not what we think it is. It's not who we are trying to blame. The biggest threat is the people, the politicians, the leaders who are maintaining and doing everything possible to keep people in ignorance, to keep people in the dark about what is it exactly they are doing, so that they can continue to lead. It's all about power, and all about power, all about staying in power, all about building wealth for their future, and so on and so forth, and the future of their children. I mean, there's a whole lot of things here. And so again, I think I've mentioned this, and I'm going to mention it again. It pains me and it hurts a lot to see even some educated people buying into this finger pointing idea of it's them, they're planning this, they're this. It's just so maddening. Because if you have a free mind, you have a mind of your own, you could see beyond that. I keep saying, and I'm going to repeat it again. If somebody comes in and say, here is money, go kill your brother, you have two choices. Either you're going to go ahead and execute that, and then yes, you're going to make a lot of money, but then what's the end? Or are you in a position to say, okay, well, I don't think I'm going to do that? Then you risk losing your own life, but at least you didn't shed your brothers. But then you can come forward and be able to say, look, this is what was proposed to me, and I refuse to do that, because there is way more than just me. It's a whole it's an entire country, it's an entire people, it's an entire nation that is being affected. And the politicians, I have no idea what is going on, but like they're some of the worst leaders that Africa has seen in a long time. And this is not today. This has been going on for a long time. I just wonder if these people really go to bed and wake up in the morning the next day thinking about those people who are dying, about those people who are being raped, about those kids who are going hungry right now, and kids who are running away from their villages and cities, have separated from their parents. It's so like, anyone with a sense of humanity would not have an appetite to even have something to eat or to do something. You can't. It's just really hard. Again, I'm not gonna take time tonight. I just want to it's the first time that we're back here, and wanted to kind of make just kind of make a point that we're back online, and we'll start broadcasting again. But I just came across this article. I was reading about the whole finger pointing, and I just thought about these are the thing that I was kind of thinking about what was going on with that. Because then as long as the finger pointing continues, no solution will ever be found, because people are going to see and say, well, you know what, they started the fire, let them and put the fire off. We're not going to do it. That's what always ends up happening. When it's always about somebody else's mistake, it's somebody else's fault, it's somebody else who's done that, there's no incentive, there's no motivation, there's nothing inside of that person who's finger pointing to want to be able to provide, to find a solution, because it cuts. I mean, it just breaks down the morale, and everything else that they could have done. The minute someone stands up and says, look, okay, what happened happened. Yes, somebody else may have hands in what's happening, but then what can I do? What can we do as a community? Again, like I said, the West will never come to resolve the problems that are happening in Africa. That's not their problem, and again, it goes to the people who are blaming specific leaders within the African countries. If you know that a specific country is meddling in another country's affairs, right? And then you start saying, oh my God, I can't believe that president say this or this ambassador say this. Why should they care about another country? Because their job is not to represent a foreign country. Their job is to represent their country. And I don't see what's a fuss about that. I don't see why people are getting so worked up about this, that, you know, an ambassador from a different country say that they don't care about another people. Well, you know what? They shouldn't care. They have a right not to care. Again, as a human being, of course, you want to care, but we should not be hoping and wishing that suddenly they'll be able to care and then start doing what they have to do to protect, like, you know, a country that is not theirs. Their job is to advance the interests of their specific country. And if those interests include creating an environment of war and so on and so forth, of course, that's going to happen. I mean, we live in a world. We know, anyone who's read the history of the world should know by now, that's how world affairs work. That's how nation relationships work. Every nation is there to look after its own interests. You know, we've had wars, and after war, a war after war. Again, nations looking after their own interests, and any other nation trying to touch those interests, it's a war, or creating a war to be able to advance their own interests, you know, their own specific agenda. This is like all over the world. From even the days of the kings, we saw that when expansion was taking place. Kings will kind of, like, you know, go into one village and shower that village with all kinds of goods, so that this village would start attacking another village, its brother village, and then this other nation, this other kingdom that's trying to advance will sit and look and let them exterminate themselves. And once they come in, exterminate the last, and they will take over the land. We've seen this over and over again. Again, that's what I say. Ignorance is the biggest weapon, because if you understand the history, if the people of Africa, if the people of Central Africa could understand history, like just look at history in details and go deeper into the history of the world and expansion and kingdoms and nations and empires, they will understand what is going on. That it's not the fight is not between brothers. The fight is not between one country and the other. It's much bigger than that. But the only people who can resolve that, the only people who can make sure that they're not being played, are the same people who are choosing not to acknowledge the fact that they are being played and start pointing fingers. There's a whole lot more that could be done. And I really hope that there is more that is done. I really hope that people start seeing the reality of what's happening, that it's really that they have more power than they think they do have, to make sure stability and peace reign in that particular region. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in this evening. This is Mr. Glorian Gazajo from the African Messenger Studio, and I wish you a good evening. Until next time, thank you again for tuning in.